Hello, we're here for session 3, refine ideas about partitioning shapes into halves, thirds, and fourths. The last couple of times you've joined me, we've learned about that. We've tried to develop our thinking about equal parts when we are partitioning shapes. We want to partition circles and squares into 2, 3, or 4 equal shares. We really need to keep that in mind. To start today, we're going to use centimeter grid paper. If you do not have grid paper, there was some in the classroom that could be copied if you could do that. If not, a journal page will work just fine. So make sure you have paper and pencil, something to write with. We're going to make each square 6 grid squares long on each side. Break one square into halves, one into thirds, and one square into fourths. Label the parts of each square. So on the next slide, here is my grid paper. You can just as well use a piece of journal paper as long as your squares look like a square. So here we go. If you do have grid paper, what it was telling you to do is to go 6 squares down. So if we do that, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And to make a square, we need to make each side equal. So we need to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then we need to go also down 6 and over 6, and we have a square. And how many times are we supposed to do that? We need to do that 3 times. I may run out of room and have to shrink one of my squares down a little bit. If you have a journal page, you have something square around your house, you could trace. That would be good. That's fine too. Or if you have a ruler, you could make each side 2 inches. Doesn't matter. I'm going to make my last square down here a little smaller. I'm just going to do 4. You have grid paper and you're running out of room like me, you can just use an even number around the edge. So I use 6 on those, 4 on this one. It'll be fine. All right, so let's do our job today. One was to divide one of the squares into halves, one into third, and one into fourths. So by now you should be able to do that pretty well. I'm going to wait for you to do that. I will say the nice thing about grid paper, if you have them, we've talked a lot about equal parts. So if you have divided the square into equal parts, and let's say you worked on the fourths, I can divide this into fourths here and fourths this way. And it did say to label each of our parts, so we better do that. This is 1/4 of the square. This is 1/4 of the square. 1/4 and 1/4. So if we added all of these fourths together, 1/4 plus 1/4 plus 1/4 plus 1/4, we would get 4/4, which is the whole. So we could add and subtract fractions that way as well. If you do have graph paper or grid paper, you can count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 parts are in here. So it's easy to see that these are equal parts. So 1/4, these are all 1/4 parts. If you didn't do that with the halves and thirds yet, go ahead and do that, and we're going to move on. Today is a little different. You'll find in the classroom slides that look like this as well. If you insert a text box, you can write right inside here. Compare what circle is divided into thirds. So when you look at these two circles, can you explain to me which one is in thirds and maybe which one looks like thirds but really isn't? The other slides are going to follow the same way. If you don't have slides to work on in your Google Classroom, you can work on paper. You can write these down, these questions, which circle is divided into thirds, explain, and take an image to share with your teacher. If the slides are in here, you each have one as a student. You can type right in there and return the assignment. The next slide was going to work the same way today. Draw. Divide the squares in half, 2 ways. Make the halves of one square different shapes from the halves of the other square. Try doing the same with the circles. What do you notice? If you have a drawing tool, this is a great time to use your drawing tool. If you do not, no worries. You can skip this or just explain what you would do. Next, apply it. Carlo and Abby buy the same sandwich. Carlo's sandwich is cut into thirds. Abe's sandwich is cut into fourths. Which sandwich has smaller pieces? Explain. Boys and girls, if you do that on your own paper and you get a text box out, you can explain your thinking right here. You will have a separate slide presentation with only these 3 slides in it to complete. If you don't have this part, you might have a Google form to fill out for your teacher for your assignment today. Since this is a refine day, we really want to know what you've learned this week. So that's why we're not doing the work together today. Number 4 is apply it. Shara and her mom make these 3 pizzas for a party. Part A, Shara will have 10 people at the party. Draw how Shara could cut each pizza into halves, thirds, or fourths to get exactly 10 pieces of pizza in all. This is your workspace on here. And we'll see how your teacher, they may have placed that one on there too. Think about that. You can answer that in your journal. Do your best at drawing your pizzas. And part B, Shara asks more people to the party. Now there will be 12 people. Draw how Shara could cut each pizza into halves, thirds, or fourths to get exactly 12 pieces of pizza in all. In closing, our exit ticket for today in your math journal, can equal parts of a whole be different shapes? So boys and girls, that's the one that's saying if we have a square and can equal parts of a whole be different shapes? Well, if we divide this square into thirds, could we make this piece and these 2 pieces, is that the same? We had a problem like this in session 1 that you can refer to. Remember to go back and do your work from your assignment from your teachers, however they have that set up.